And I think I'm going to have to use the microphone. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah? Pardon? Hi, beautiful people. How are you feeling? Are you enjoying the yoga festival? We've gone past that halfway point where it's like, it's almost over. What if I don't get all those classes in? So don't worry about that. There's always next year. There's always next lifetime for some of us, not for all of us. And we're here this afternoon to tap into perhaps the greatest of my work in this lifetime, the deeper understanding of fasting. And I'm definitely going to get up because I can't sit down and talk about fasting because it's just so exciting. So I have to tell you a few housekeeping things before we begin. First is that I passed around some flyers. If you didn't get one, there are a few more up here. I also have little cards, and of course, that's great advertising, right, for this retreat that I have coming up in Sri Lanka. It's also, more importantly, it's your key to my website, and my website has a ton of free information. All of my lectures I record, and I put up there for free online for you, so if that's of interest, it's on there. So if that's how you have it, it's liveforvitality.com. Even this lecture. Yeah? And I have lots of fasting lectures already up there, so if you want to share with your beloveds this great human power, which we often forget about, and have the opportunity to reconnect into. Alright, so, was your neighbor nice? The one that you met? Yeah. Isn't that great? What if we went into all the classes of the festival and just met someone? Just say hi. That's the yoga of connection. It's a very important style of yoga. Yeah. Awesome. So you're welcome to come and go as you want. You know that the lectures are recorded online, so you won't be worried. But I am here to hopefully activate a truth inside of you. This deeper understanding that you are more powerful than you've allowed yourself to believe thus far. And so my lectures thus far at the festival have been about epigenetics, microbiome, that was the first one. The second one was about core foundations of health. Some of you were there, I see familiar faces. These essences of life, things like hydration, elimination, restoration, and respiration, specifically at the cellular level, that are fundamentals to health. And the thing is, when you go to any acupuncturist or a Reiki specialist, or you go for a massage, or even go to an Ayurvedic doctor and take some medication, if you don't have these fundamentals of health already accounted for, then there is no chance of quote-unquote healing. Because you can't build a house without a foundation. And so if you're interested in that and you missed yesterday morning's 6:30 a.m. lecture, that was a hit, then you can check that out on my website as well. I did a TED Talk last year, and it's the foundations of health. Alright, so other resources that I can give you are the things to tap into your own power. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I find it very important to introduce myself at the beginning of any lecture, because anyone who can stand up here with a microphone and say something for an hour probably has some opinions, and I'm no exception to that, and so I choose to expose my biases up here at front at the beginning. And so everything I do is rooted in a science called natural hygiene. You might have heard of it. It's something that originated out of Nature Cure, an Indian practice from millennia ago, that looks at the elements and looks at the perfect balance and accepts that we have everything we need inside. So this backbone, natural hygiene, of all of my work, uses fasting as the greatest tool to allow whatever is to come about. And really the thesis of natural hygiene is that the body can heal itself. I'll say that again, because you weren't taught that in school. The body can heal itself. It simply has to be given the time and space, alas, the environment to do so. And so a lot of us have been in this conversation this entire week, this magical conversation about epigenetics, about proteins, about the cellular culture. Bruce has been bringing the science to us, and I'll do that to a lesser extent. But what we have to do as yogis is step back and say, it's all really one thing. It's all the same thing. If the mind heals the body, and I'll add a little bit more onto what Bruce is saying, it's not only the mind that heals the body, it's the body that heals itself. It's prana, life force energy. And so I often talk about how humans today have been exposed, or perhaps are exposing ourselves, to a variety of obstacles, of things, layers, veils, that are in our way making us feel heavy or disconnected. And we don't need anything to make us feel connected. Simply all we have to do is lift the veils, remove the layers, jump over the obstacles, or remove them. And our road is clear to health. And so the work that I present today is from my teachers 100 years ago, the natural hygienists in the movement. The work I present today is from the work on my own body. Nothing I say ever has not been tested and verified in this human laboratory. Because the truth is, when it comes to the body, the stuff that we do in the lab is not very accurate. Because it's taking you out of your normal environment. If I want to do an experiment on your digestion, I take you into the laboratory, I cut you open, and I investigate your digestion. But wait, so much has changed. You're no longer living, breathing, digesting as you were outside of the lab. And so what that means is that we're at a great loss for everything we think we know about human health, to a certain extent. Definitely about this field of nutrition, or food, and definitely about things like human digestion or healing. We're finding out so much, and definitely quantum mechanics is adding to how much we're learning about health. And so this message that I'm sliding in here subliminally at the beginning is the message that your living laboratory is the most powerful place to do experimentation. And so if anything I say today or ever, please do not believe me. Rather, verify me. So, you have homework already. Those of you who have been coming to my lectures know that I'm fond of assigning homework. And so your homework is sometime over the next 360 days, it's the 5th day of the festival, right? 360 days, you have until the festival next year. I will ask that you experiment with fasting. So just know that that's coming. Now I know that you're probably going to pay better attention for the rest of the lecture, because I'm here to tell you how. And moreover, more than how, what effect it will have. So this work is work that comes from natural hygiene. I'll say that word one more time. Another resource to give you is a great website called soilandhealth.org. This is a website that has most of the original natural hygiene texts for free available online because they're out of print. My teachers from 100 years ago are no longer living. They're no longer in body. Soilandhealth.org. Alright? So natural hygiene is definitely perhaps my biggest bias. It's what brings me here today to talk about fasting. I also have a great bias towards elimination, the large intestine. I'm called the poo guru. Right? They call me the poo guru. I talk about poop a lot. Those of you there yesterday morning, you know, that conversation. More stuff on my website if you want to find out about poo. How many times are we meant to be pooping per day? Someone who's been here before?
3 times.
There we go. Love you all. Once per meal per day. That's news. That's news. I know. Most people in this room are constipated. That's okay. That's okay. We have pathways, advice, how to get out of that. Check out my website. For this lecture, though, we're also going to be pulling from my master's work in looking at disease and disease reversal. Okay? Because most of our diet and lifestyle-related disease of today, cancer, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, heart disease, and obesity, they're all preventable, as well as causable, and reversible through diet and lifestyle change alone. And if you're someone who likes to get ahead of the curve, if you're someone who likes to be first in line, then fasting is the fastest way to reverse any condition, chronic or acute. What we do when we fast, and now we're getting into the heart of the lecture, is we allow the digestive system to slow down and shut off. It takes a period of 3 days or 72 hours for this to fully happen. And the digestive tract itself can take up to 70%, that was 70, not 17, 70% of all available energy. That's more than most. And this is stuff you know. Maybe I'll be able to exemplify it in a little bit if everyone falls asleep. When you've just eaten, especially if it's a big meal, think of a holiday meal. Afterwards, how do you feel? A little bit sleepy. Well, you know that's the exchange of energy in the body. Well, imagine if you could harness that and be the captain of that energy flow. Take the energy that would normally go to digestion and instead allow it to go to the cells to heal and cleanse at a cellular level. That's what we're working on with fasting. That's what we're employing, that prana that we're always connected to, allowing the body to heal itself. So again, there's nothing that you don't need. There's nothing that you don't have that you need. Pardon, there's nothing that you need that you don't have. All the tools are already there. We just have to let it happen. Do you ever find that you're trying to heal? You're trying too hard to heal? I'm hustling to heal. When the truth is, all we have to do is step back. And we might say in a spiritual context, allow the grace of God to come through. Well, a lot of times when we stop eating, we stop giving our body those constant obstacles. It has more time, literally, more free time to go into a process called autophagy. And so people like me in the health field who work with fasting, we are celebrating right now because a Japanese scientist just won the Nobel Prize in science for his work on autophagy. What's autophagy? It's cellular self-digestion. It's the cells repairing themselves. So what I'm talking about has been proven and finally now celebrated by science. But do we use that in the pharmaceutical industry? Or in allopathic medicine? No, of course not, because we can't make money off of not having people eat. Not only does the pharmaceutical industry lose out, the allopathic medicine field loses out, the food industry loses out. Oh my goodness. This whole thing I'm about to talk about, fasting, this is a secret that perhaps won't really ever be publicized mainstream. Luckily though, the amount of experimentation about fasting is skyrocketing. So I'll bring to you an experiment done about 2.5 years ago. It was published, so probably 3 years ago now, in California, right, on cancer patients. So remember that was one of the 5 most maladies of our time, most common maladies that are preventable, pausable, and reversible through diet and lifestyle change. Well, on cancer patients going through chemotherapy, so cancer patients with a big old challenge to their immune system, they were put on a fasting regimen, a water fasting regimen specifically. So that meant that they weren't taking anything in but water. Well, in that period of the test, which was 3 days, first of all, what was noticed was that the white blood cell count went down. So, that might be worrisome. Oh my God, their immune systems are getting weaker. But then, as we found, after the fast, when they refed, the white blood cell count went up higher than it was before the start of the fast. What we had effectively found through this research was that there was a total reboost in the immune system for a 3-day fast. Right? That is not something that you can buy in a bottle or take a pill for. A reboost of your immune system? Having your body be able to heal itself just like that. All you have to do is nothing. Don't eat. Right? I know that last part. That sounded like nothing. I normally start these lectures, I'm going to do it now. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. I would like you to imagine, I suppose, everything that you've eaten today. Every single morsel, everything you've drunk, everything right there out in front of you, the breakfast, the lunch, any snacks in between. And now imagine all of that disappeared. All of that went away. I pulled out the tablecloth under it. And you've had nothing to eat today. What comes up inside of you? What is that? What is that feeling? What is that thought?
Space.
Space above it. Relax. Any poor me? Poor me. I haven't eaten today. So allow your eyes to open when you're ready. Just a fun little imagery game. Maybe, who knows, maybe there was some healing that happened there. That visualization of a fast. But it often sends off the red light of the root chakra. Like, oh my God, I haven't eaten. I need food. Who's ever had that sentence come out of their mouth? Oh, I love how honest you are. Yes, I need food. Well, something else you were taught in school is that the human body can thrive and survive for 40 to 50 or more days on water alone. I myself do regular fasts, whether they're water fasts of 3 or more weeks at a time, or juice feasts of 5, 6 weeks at a time. I feel better than I would if I had eaten. Because not only is my body healing itself, not only am I allowed to be in a meditative state almost at all times, because there's not all this external energy coming in through food, but also, more than anything, I'm given that excess energy that would normally go to digestion. And so on day 17 of a water fast, I could feel like I would run a marathon. I don't. I conserve my energy. And this is magic. It's programmed in ourselves to go through cycles of feast and famine, and feast and famine. What do we have today?
Feast.
Feast. The famine almost never comes, especially for anyone sitting in this room. So, we're only left with seeing one side of the coin, one aspect of life, right? The light and not the dark, the dark and not the light, the ha and not the ka, the yin and not the yang. And yet, to know entirety, to know wholeness of existence, it's so desperately needed that we experience this other way of being without. And so, of course, we know fasting as a spiritual practice in every great religion throughout time. And religion is a counterstone of a culture. It often gives advice on how to live a healthy life, whether we know it or not. Fasting is part of the regimen. And so this is not only for healing, but for greater spiritual evolution. When we look at yoga, of course, the kriyas, the cleansing techniques, fasting is the greatest of which is the queen. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika says that cleansing is the number one priority. And yet cleansing is something that happens passively when we choose to allow our body to just be, to just heal. When we rest our digestive system, reboost our immune system simply by being present. Of course, your fast will only be enhanced by your practice if that's a meditative practice, if that's a visualization practice, if that's a gentle asana practice, whatever it is. So when we get down to fasting, does it sound good? It sounds like, wow, how have I never heard about this before? Well, the reason we haven't heard about it before is because we as human beings, we are all walking around with a massive addiction to food. We all have an eating disorder. And a lot of that's because we have no idea where our food is coming from. We're so disconnected from the source, from the earth, from where it's grown, from how it's processed, from the transport, from where it was grown to us. And so as we show up and we just eat, right, with that disconnection, with that lack of appreciation, is what it is, in a way, and that's nothing that I'm judging or blaming any of us for, because that's the reality of the modern world, that's the world we live in. And so it's no surprise that it results in this kind of disordered relationship with food. And so that red light root chakra that goes off when I say fasting, and you say, I can't do that. Who thought that? Anyone? Yeah. This is something that breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. How many of my clients come in to my fasting retreats, and on day 5, day 6, when they haven't eaten for 5 or 6 days, they say, first of all, I feel so good, I can't believe it, I have so much energy. And then second of all, this is the part that breaks my heart. They say, I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I could do it. Oh my goodness, we are not only disconnected from this source of prana, we're also disconnected from this understanding that we are more powerful than this body and this mind combined. And so this trust that we have in the spiritual sphere, this is perhaps one of the most spiritual yoga festivals that I've ever had the privilege to speak at in the world. This trust that we have of the universe, of God, of Krishna, of whomever, whatever, that force that is all of us combined, that trust can be extended inside of us too. When we go beyond and perhaps trust the practice of fasting and trust our body's ability to self-heal, that's wherein we reconnect to the greatest power we've ever had, prana, this life force. So I hope you have a direct experience with prana. If you've never had and you can't really manage to feel prana energy between your hands, right, or coursing through your body, and this connection to source, then fasting is a really great inlet, because the thing is, when you fast, that connection just comes. Because there's nothing veiling it or shrouding it. Does that make sense? Alright, so I've done my bit to hopefully convince you that this is a worthwhile practice. And we'll spend the rest of the time actually talking about how to fast. And I'll make sure to leave ample time for questions. So do hold your questions for the end a little bit. Beautiful. Alright, so how to fast. Let's say that you want to leave here and you've been inspired. I can heal myself. Whatever that is, if that's like you had a scrape, or here's a good one, giardia, or any kind of belly, feeling ill. Well, diarrhea, that's your body's self-healing response. It's your body literally spitting something out. And so the minute that you put something into a mouth that is spitting out, it's not so happy. It spits it back out. And it will continue to spit back out. You will continue to have diarrhea until you stop putting something in. Alright? And so all we have to do really is fast, especially when it's something like deli belly. 16 to 18 hours, that's all it takes. That's all it takes. Allow your body's self-healing mechanism to go through, and then you'll be fine the next day. The diarrhea will continue. Or let's say you're going in for surgery, and God bless Germany. Where are my Germans? Yeah. So in Germany, there's a lot of experimental medical stuff going on right now. Things like fecal implants, an amazing way to get the microbiome activated, as well as pre- and post-surgical, post-op fasting for healing. Can you imagine that? You have a cut. Let's say you just got a cut, right? Or something happened, you scraped your leg, you got in a motorbike accident, whatever it is. And then you start fasting. This is going to be the fastest way to allow that cellular self-repair, because you're simply not putting any kind of obstacles in the way. And a part of you that's been programmed and made to think this might say, but I need, remember that phrase we talked about? I need nutrition. I need nutrients. My cells need protein. Right? The greatest myth of our time, because there's tons of protein in fruits and vegetables, and there is absolutely no Western medical diagnosis of protein deficiency. It simply doesn't exist, yet we're chasing our tails, running around in fear of it at all times. It's crazy. And so I do a whole other lecture on how do you know what you think you know about health. We can investigate how we know what we think we know. Then we can find some freedom outputs. To be able to free ourselves from all that stuff we've been told and realign ourselves with really what is resonant or what feels true to a deeper aspect of our existence. So, fasting for healing, again, for those cancer patients, as well as for something acute, that motorbike injury or surgery. It's an amazing, amazing tool. Fasting itself is also a practice. It's something that you use in your life, just like you would use your pranayama practice, or you would use your mudra practice, or you would use your asana practice. Fasting itself is a practice. And it's something that you need to ease into. It's not necessarily something that you just dive in. I mean, you can if you want. Come join me for a retreat. It's very nice doing fasting in a group because all of those doubts in the head are dissuaded, more or less. But fasting is something that you build, just like you would build a muscle. Alright, so getting into the how-to part of the fasting lecture, we'll talk about if you've never gone a day in your life without eating. Raise your hand, I just want to see my demographic research. Alright, so probably a good, 5% or so. You've never gone a day in your life without eating. So that's amazing. You have a great opportunity here to experience something new. Why not? With that, just start with breakfast. Wake up one day. Doesn't have to be tomorrow. It can be tomorrow if you want. That's really exciting. If it's tomorrow, let me know. Come up and tell me. And just have water. Water. Great breakfast. How much water are we supposed to be drinking per day? 3 liters. You guys are great on the top quizzes. 3 liters of water per day. On an empty stomach. That's how much the body uses and loses just by waking up on average. And so to replace that is so important. And dehydration is really at the root of most disease. You can test this. You'll feel it on your yoga mat. If you do this, you see my hand? Do this on your yoga mat. Yeah? Bend your fingers backwards. If that hurts, then likely you're dehydrated. And so all the tissues in the body, the connective tissues, the ligaments, the tendons, the fascia, right? Even the skin to an extent. The muscles, for sure. Right? They're all fueled by blood. Right? Lymph circulating through them, and blood and lymph are the fluids of our bodies. And when our bodies are not properly hydrated, there will be a tightness, or a hardness, or a rubberiness. You can reach over to your neighbor, give them a little massage, tell them you're dehydrated. I love it. Okay, so fasting is a lot like building a muscle. With this, we start small. So we said maybe breakfast is a great way to start. You wake up, you have water for breakfast. You do that enough times until you feel really confident that you're not going to die. That you'll survive, that you'll be okay, and maybe even it gets easier over time. And then you add in, maybe you have water for breakfast, you can have green juice for lunch, why not? And then you go until 5 or 6, I don't know, dinner time, and you eat. Simply, don't overcompensate. I didn't eat breakfast, lunch, so I'm going to gorge myself for dinner. Just normally, gently. Love yourself. Treat yourself like a baby that you're picking up out of a cradle. This practice, then you would do it enough times until you feel comfortable, and then eventually you get to 24 hours. And you would fast a full 24 hours. And that'll just start to amaze you. I survived, you'll say. And you'll be proving it to yourself, and that's way more powerful than anything I could ever say. And so allow this experience to unfold. After that, after your 24 hours, right? And it can be with green juice, it can be with water, whatever you're comfortable with. Just no solid fibrous matter is to enter the system, naturally occurring liquids. And so if that includes coconut water, okay, fine. The less you have in general, the more time your body will have to heal because it won't have to process anything. Do you see that? Alright, cool. So, after that 24 hours, maybe you're ready for a 3-day. Remember that 72-hour mark? Allowing the digestive system to shut off. I meant to have slides, but I didn't have the adapter that needed for their machines. I keep pointing up there, like it says 72 hours. I'm happy to show you my slides after class if you want to come up here later. Very exciting, very exciting. Anyway, so with that, 3 days of fasting, that would be a great way to start. It would be a huge undertaking where you feel like you've really accomplished something. Not in an egoic sense, really in a connection sense. And you say, wow, this life, so much more is available to me than I've been told. I can survive for 3 days without food, and I usually feel better after it. Sometimes these things will come up that are called detox symptoms. Have you heard of them? They're a very normal part of the practice. Hold on, drink some water. Detox symptoms are things like headaches, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, right? General sense of lethargy, a sense of feeling like you don't have very much energy at times, but then a lot of energy at other times. And what this is symbol of, or signifying, is that the process is working. When you have toxicity coming from the cell, and we all have toxicity, that's part of living in the 21st century world. We could all detox a little bit, especially if you have bad breath, bad underarm smell, or any kind of discharge from the body which just doesn't feel right. That's not normal. Right? We think it's normal, and then we get some kind of chemical product to put on and correct it. But that's a signal from the body to say, I need to detox. That halitosis, so that's just a little wake-up call for everyone here. But anyway, with this, when we have toxicity moving from the cell through the bloodstream to the colon or the lungs for elimination, we're going to feel a little bit toxic. Toxicity running through the bloodstream. And so that headache, right, that nausea feeling, that's not something to get scared at. There you are in the middle way through your 3-day fast, and you say, oh, I'm so nauseous, I need to eat something. Like, did you hear it? What did I say? I need. Right? And then we feel bad for ourselves, and we think the fasting didn't work. Well, what happened to that trust, to that connection, to our power? I can say your higher power, but really it's our power, and it's no higher or lower. It's accessible to us in every moment. So this is simply a practice which gives us direct access. So there you are. You're fasting. You go through. If you feel nauseous, it's fine. Just drink water. Great part of cleansing is also elimination through the bowel. I mentioned that. So I would recommend you can get your own enema kit from a pharmacy anywhere here. Learn how to do an enema on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Andrea Page ND, naturopathic doctor. I looked that up. There's a video I explain how to do an enema. I don't demonstrate, but I do mine. Okay? So you can learn how to do that, and that in and of itself is perhaps one of the greatest freedom tools that you could ever have in your health. Because there you are, right? You never have to be constipated again a day in your life. And that's not something to get addicted to, mind you. It's merely a tool. Again, a tool to use. These tools, which were so common 2 generations ago. With the 1930s and the advent of the pharmaceutical industry, they were just swept under the rug. So bringing them back, self-healing tools. So there we are. You've completed this 3-day fast. Right? What are you going to do to eat your first meal? Well, you're not going to drive up to the next, what's the name of the fast food chain? McDonald's. Okay, that's funny. And order yourself a Big Mac, happy, thank you, I don't know. Okay, I wouldn't know. Yes, you're not going to do that. What you're going to do is, again, treat yourself like that baby that you're lifting out of the cradle and putting it back. And so how we design a fast, for example, a 3-day fast, is we'll take half the length of the fast, and we'll imagine that there's like a bridge on either side leading up to this plateau that is the 3 days of fasting. And that bridge will always be 1/2 the length of the fast itself. So if you're planning a 3-day fast, what's 1/2 of 3? Just checking to make sure you're awake. 1.5, very good. So 1.5 days is how long you would take to prepare for the fast. Right? And then 1.5 days is how long you would take after the fast until you get back to quote-unquote life as normal in terms of eating. And so what does that mean, prepare? Well, it would mean that you immediately, as soon as you start that bridge to prepare for the fast, you stop having all processed foods. You stop having all animal products. You stop having all kinds of additives, preservatives. anything that's not a whole food, essentially, come onto a fully yogic diet, which, as yogis, if we're already there, then hallelujah. Then you'll take your time and you'll taper in slowly, stopping eating any kind of complicated food. Maybe you want to stop gluten, dairy, be really simple, maybe a half day, you would just have like a simple, very simple, limited ingredients, quote-unquote vegan diet. And then for one day before the fast, give your system a real break. Maybe you just have fruit the whole day. The simplest, fastest digesting food, ripe fruit. Then you come on to the fast. You have your days of the fast. And the bridge to exit the fast is the reverse of the one coming up. So how would you want to break the fast then? Yeah, fruit, the fastest digesting food, fastest transiting through the stomach. A ripe fruit. And you're not going to go and eat a bunch of it. You have one piece at a time. Sadhguruji was just talking about a meditation of eating that raisin for a half hour. Did you hear that? Yeah, that great? Something like that, an eating meditation. I have a free one available on my website if you're looking. To just enjoy, spend your time coming back to food. Allow it to be this beautiful recommunion. Because the truth is that fasting is a practice that not only heals us on a physical level, of course it deeply connects us on a spiritual level, but more than anything, it can really help our emotional connection to food. Right? We talked about that disordered eating that everyone has an eating disorder today. Yeah? Well, when you go into a fasting practice, you're taking some time and space away from your beloved food. It's kind of like if anyone had a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner, and you have some time away from them. What is that phrase? Distance makes the heart grow fonder. You know, so when you come back, you have this newfound relationship and love, appreciation. And so with that, we'll see. So with this, that reunion can be really, really sweet. And you'll learn so much about your eating life during your fasting life. You'll also learn a lot about other people's eating life during their fasting life. Alright, so almost our question times. I'm just thinking of anything else that I have to tell you. Again, different types of fasting, different strokes for different folks. Water fasting is the most intense. And so fasting is a lot like a roller coaster, I tend to tell people. You have ups and you have downs. And the ups are the benefits of fasting, right? They're the boosted immune system, a renewed sense of clarity, like this just connection to the source. All of a sudden things make sense. You know what you want in life. You remember who you are. I have a great job because all of these things happen just automatically when people come into my presence and start fasting. Right? It's not my presence, it's the fasting itself that's bringing about this tremendous amount of clarity of emotions, clarity of really purpose at a deep level. Because there's no obstacles in the way, the veils have been lifted. That's magical, isn't it? Yeah. So with those benefits, those are definitely, you'll experience that excess energy, like a spring bump in your step, wanting to run down and tell the whole world how amazing everything is. And then the detox symptoms are the dip down of the roller coaster. And the truth about fasting is that it's this up and down process. And my invitation to people is always to find a meditative middle ground where it doesn't matter if we're up or if we're down because we're alive and we're having a human experience. And we're aware. And bringing our yoga and our mindfulness into the practice is what's so important. That you don't have out the violin saying, oh, poor me, right? Or I need this or that. It's a practice that brings up so much truth because you can't run away. Have you ever run away to food before? Coping with something through eating? Do you know that phrase, I'm eating to get my mind off of things? Guess what? There's physiological underpinning to that. As we eat, literally, blood flows down away from our brain to the digestive tract, getting our mind off of things. That 70% of available energy, up to 70% that digestion can take, that's reflected by blood flow to the gastrointestinal canal. It's amazing. And so all of this, finally, this battle back and forth with food can start to find a little more clarity. And we just give it a chance. Our body as well will begin to heal any kind of illness or dis-ease, chronic or acute, if we just give it a chance. We can find deeper meaning. We can get out of that programming and become even more mindful if we just allow ourselves to be and stop hustling to heal. Alright? So, lovely beings, I'll take some questions if you have. Yes?
For fasting, I've heard from the doctors that people who have sugar, high sugar, diabetes, or heart problems, they should have 4 or 5 small meals a day. So,
great, so I will speak to this, and I'm going to expand your question if I may, because I didn't talk about it. He's asking about essentially contraindications to fasting, which is very important, I must say, before you leave this room. Fasting is not for everyone. Fasting will not heal everything. Fasting will not. Right. So anyone who has some kind of, let's say, malady where they're under a doctor's care, and more importantly, where they're taking pharmaceutical medication, that's something where you want to check in with, because that's a direct altering of the physiology. And what fasting does, and this is, it gives me an outlet to say something else that I didn't, is fasting will balance out any imbalance in the body, whether that's hormonal. Right? Whether that's a heart disease, right? Whether that's some kind of bipolarism, for example, any kind of chemical imbalance in the body coming from the endocrine system will simply balance out while fasting. And so it's a really great time if you're looking, and this is more for later, let's say more advanced, once you're confident in fasting, it's a really great time to come off of medications. Really great time to stop taking that hormone replacement therapy or the birth control or whatever it is that's keeping you permanently in balance, because that's what those pharmaceutical medications are doing on a physiological level. And so in terms of someone with an imbalance, for example, a sugar imbalance, fasting would definitely allow it to balance out. And there are studies done of diabetes patients who go into a fasting program, and what do you know? 3 weeks later, there's no diabetes. Okay? And that can even happen through dietary change as well. And so, as I started at the beginning, of course, the allopathic medicine community is not necessarily going to hop at this and say, yeah, go ahead and fast. It's a great idea. So any advice you've heard from a doctor, it's not surprising.
can you do hatha yoga while you fast?
For sure you can. I mean, keep it gentle, follow where you are. Again, the more intense fast you're doing, so a water fast, which, side note on water fasting, you have to do it in a very, very, very pristine environment. With spring water, with very little radiation, with very little people around, especially people who doubt you. You don't want to be around those kinds of people. What are you doing? You're withering away. Right? That fear that would be programmed. And so water fasting is a practice that's almost lost in the modern world because there's so few places where we can do it. There's the International Natural Hygiene Society where you can look up water fasting centers around the world and go. And that's especially if there's someone in your life. And, I mean, don't force feed someone fasting. Right? Maybe send them this lecture first and have them listen to it. But if there's someone in your life who has a chronic disease, right, even one that's been given a certain amount of time to live, something like that, then a water fasting clinic is a great place to go. And they go and they enroll 1 month water fasting, right? They come out a completely healed, whole individual most of the time. And you won't hear about this on the evening news. And so in terms of other contraindications, someone who is pregnant, that's a big one. No kinds of detoxification are friendly to any pregnant woman. Right? If you're looking to conceive, any kind of detoxification will be very, very helpful. Anyone who's severely underweight, anyone who has any kind of mental imbalance or just isn't fully there, let's say, and anyone who has an active eating disorder. These are not great candidates for fasting, but really almost any other condition could be greatly helped through fasting.
Yes. So all of the benefits that come with fasting, don't they just go away when you start eating again?
Don't they go away when you start eating again? I love her. Well, what are you eating when you start eating again? Very good question. Often fasting, and we were talking about this yesterday, often fasting gives you a renewed sense of sensitivity. And this is one of the most beautiful parts of the practice because it awakens you to this guide within. I did an interview for someone's podcast last night, And she was saying, well, yeah, but like people, they don't know what their guide within is anymore. You say, oh, just listen to your body. Well, the thing is, when you listen to your body and you love eating a big slice of pizza, who loves cheese? Yeah, there's my honest folks. So that slice of pizza, it has 1,000 calories in one slice. You never see anything like that in the natural kingdom. And so when you eat that slice of pizza, guess what? The response in your human brain is a straight dopamine shot. It's the same thing that happens when you snort cocaine. And so you feel great. You feel so good. You love pizza. I can't tell you how many people come in my office and say, Andrea, I'll do anything you say. I just won't give up cheese. Love. Well, if we can become mindful of the physiological process of what's happening, again, applying our yoga to our body, all of a sudden we can reroute its power over us. Does that make sense? And so, I forget your original question. Did I answer it?
Yeah, I'm getting it. Yeah, so my question was, when all the benefits that come with the fasting, don't they just go away when you start eating?
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'll give you my graffiti analogy, my classic graffiti analogy. This is what I tell my clients at the end of a fasting week. Imagine this wall was covered in graffiti. It's a beautiful wall with beautiful artwork, but imagine graffiti everywhere. Super cluttered, super crowded. Right? And then someone goes up and they tag their name. Is anyone a graffiti artist? Do you have a tag? Alright, we're going to say your tag is Wave. Okay, so she goes up, she writes Wave. And then she steps back and says, look, I tagged my name. And we're like, they can't see what you did that, Wave. Where is it? Because there's so much there. That's your body before a fast. Well, when you come into a fasting process, your body is actively healing and cleansing. It's getting rid of the unwanted to make room for what's needed. That's a quote from Deskachar. All of a sudden, we've wiped off the wall. We've cleansed. Cleansing, wiping off the wall. And then afterwards, Wave goes up and she tags her name, Wave, right there. Are we going to see it? Yeah, it's more obvious. Well, that's like a meal that you used to have before the fast, and then after the fast. It's going to have a different effect on you. And so for years, as I started to cleanse my diet and change what I was eating and really treat this body as the temple it is, and make sure its offerings are whole, if you will, people would say to me, but why are you so sensitive? If you're healthy, why are you so sensitive? Because my body knows very well what's meant for it and what's not. And there are a lot of people who will tell you so much in the modern world about diet and health and what's right and what's wrong, and you need enough vitamin B, X, Q, Y, L, 12. All of these things. There's so much information going around. Everyone has an opinion to share. Well, the thing is, I'm not really interested in talking to anyone unless they've had experience with fasting. Because this living laboratory of the human body needs to be cleaned to be able to make clean experiments and get clean results. And so if we want to find out truth about food and what's right to eat and what's not, right, the fasting practice is what gives us the baseline to be able to make those experiments and know those truths. Yes?
I know you said spring water was one of the better ones to use, but which is the best water compared to, you know, there's like reverse osmosis, there's like all the pH balance ones, like just...
Yeah, so spring water is about a pH of about 7.4, which is recommended, or 7.3. So any of those pH waters, like Kangen water and all these other things, they're actually really confusing the system. It's funny when you take them because your stomach has a pH of 2. So then you pour on the pH 9 water in your stomach, pH 2, and it really balances it. So a lot of things like this are just marketing. They're trying to sell you something. In terms of other kinds of water, like reverse osmosis, you said reverse osmosis is an amazing filtration process. So amazing, in fact, that it takes the minerals out of the water as well. And yet the minerals are an integral part of water, just like we have whole food. We have whole water. And so demineralized water runs through the body as wetness. The body's not actually able to ionically absorb the water and have this hydration. And so in that case, right, remineralizing the water in some way would be helpful if you have an RO system. But spring water is really your best bet. And my friend Daniel Vitalis has a website, www.findaspring.com. And it's a map of the entire world. I've announced it to literally thousands of people by now, so hopefully there are more and more springs being mapped there every day. Please find a spring near you, right out to the countryside. It would take maybe 1 or 2 hours. That would be super lovely. Once a month, you can bring big jugs, fill it up, and come back. Serve yourself. Water is our #1 need. I just told you guys that the body can thrive for a really long time without food. And yet we're so overly concerned about getting organic food, this and that, and highest quality food, and we don't give it. We don't care very much. I will not curse in my lecture. We don't care about our water. When indeed, that's way more important.
What about distilled?
Yeah, so distilled water has a whole essence of itself, but we can't replace the need for minerals through water. Yes.
Why do you eat them?
Why do you eat that? I love her. She's on the track to breatharianism. Some people don't eat. The highest of yogis and monks actually don't eat, right? Because there's no need for anything. And so, why do we eat? You're asking me a very, very, let's say almost theological question. I don't have an answer for you. Why do we eat? We eat because we are made of this earth. Right? And in our journey through earth, it's helpful to have earth in our body to keep us connected. Rather than floating off and floating
We
away.
don't need nutrition, right?
Am I saying we don't need nutrition? Maybe. I'm not going to say if I'm saying that or not. Yeah, I mean, these are things to think about. These are the higher spiritual teachings when we come into the practice of fasting. In terms of this lecture, and what I will say is that fasting is the fastest way to go. Hands down. Alright, what are we going to do? More questions than we have time. Wait, does anyone feel like 3 other people must have their question? 3 other people have my question. Alright, yes.
So, what's the ideal fasting? You said, is it 3 days? Because there's 5-2 and there's 16-8 and it's a smaller. And if it is 3 days, then how often should you do the 3 days?
So what I said was make it a practice. How often should you do your asana practice, sir?
3 days.
Right? So regularly is your answer. That's my answer with fasting. Regularly. But what I will answer is really great times to fast. Right? 4 really great times to fast. Number 1, when you're sick. The minute you start to get sniffles, or you feel ill, fast. Give your body back the power to heal. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because you think when you're sick, you're weak, and you need to eat. Have you heard this whole adage, food is fuel?
Yeah.
I spend most of my life reprogramming people on this one. Because in a way, yeah, food is a calorie source, but prana is the ultimate fuel. And it's digestion, the process of digestion heats up prana. Right? It heats up life force energy. And so, yes, food is fuel, but yes, also we have fuel inherently inside of us. Right? So, first time to fast is when you're sick. Regenerate, jumpstart your body's ability to heal. Second time to fast, international airplane flights. Not a time where your body wants to digest anything. In fact, there's a reversal in the system that goes where the peristalsis, the muscular action through the colon, actually starts going backwards. Right? The stomach nearly shuts off. In that sealed, pressurized, dehumidified cabin, it's pretty much the most unnatural environment that humans could ever imagine being in for an extended period of time. Your digestive system doesn't work. Definitely airplane food is not something you want to eat. Made 6 months in advance, your taste buds on your tongue are deadened at altitude, and so there's lots of chemicals that are put in the food. Excitotoxins, they're called. Things like MSG, you know that, where you're tasting it with your brain rather than with your tongue. So on your flight home, everyone, maybe this is homework number 2. You can go and order a fruit plate, if anything. Just eat the fastest digesting food, or fast if it's possible. Alright, third time, best time to fast. Every so often, regularly. So if that's seasonally, if that's when you're moving into a new house, starting a new job, or finishing another one. That's coming in and out of a relationship. Cleanse, literally. Allow that space for clarity of knowing. Ever so often, whatever it means to you. I love to stumble onto a fast if it's like 5 o'clock and you haven't eaten anything that day. Oh, wow, what a great opportunity to already be fasted. And just add another 2 days. And then fourth time. Does that sound easier than it is? That wasn't a joke, actually. I love that everyone laughed. Alright, so fourth time to fast is when you are not emotionally stable. When you're stressed. And that's not like go on a full-fledged fast. That's just when you're stressed, don't eat. It might take 10 deep breaths to get over that. Or wait till dinner, where you can be more calm. Because if we're not calm, our digestion won't work anyway. And so the other part of your question, which was really important, is how long is the optimal fast? And there is no length of an optimal fast. I, as a practitioner now with about 13 years of fasting experience, I edge toward longer fasts because the longer you go, the deeper it gets. And the more amazing the discoveries are. And the inflammation in the body just disappears completely. The shorter fasts, though, have their value. And so remember I said fasting is like building a muscle? Well, the first thing you would lift is a 5 kilo weight. You would lift that a few times. And then you would lift a 10 kilo weight a few times until it feels really stable. And then you would go to a 15 kilo weight. Who knows? I don't know your weightlifting schedule, but you know what I mean. So allow it to be a practice that builds. And if you come to me 5 years from now, or write me 5 years from now, and I'll remember, and tell me where we were here on the stage together. And that future time that doesn't really exist. Tell me about your fasting practice and where it's going. Because this is the potential for everything you could ever want. Available right here inside of you. All you have to do is nothing. How cool is that?
I'm also a believer in fasting, but I've been thinking the past few years, instead of fasting, isn't it better to eat like just in a nutritious way, small meals, whole food, just to give your body nutrition so that you never feast, never really fast.
Yeah, so as in spiritual traditions, you find that as people get more and more involved with their mindfulness practice, their meditation practice, it's more encompassing into their entire life. They eat less and less and less, for sure. So there is validation to that. However, having the digestive system still turned on and that obstacle every day doesn't give you an entryway into the portal of deeper healing. Because if the digestive system remains on, then you never get that up to 70% of energy to be able to heal. The body goes into what would be called physiologically like a detox mode, you could say. And so you have to enter into that space to get the benefit of fasting. However, in terms of giving your body something and still some nourishment, there's a new practice that wasn't available 100 years ago when my teachers were teaching and discovering. It's called juice feasting. And it's something that I've been experimenting with over the past year and hadn't really given any credit to before that. But that's having 2 to 3 liters of juice a day. So it's no longer a fast. It's not like 1 or 2 or 3 green juices. Right? It's having actual nutrition coming into the body and calories to a large extent. And that as well can allow the body to heal very rapidly. And so people with chronic diseases might come in to a 90-day juice feast. And it'll blow their mind. They'll learn so much during it. They're still nourished. They don't really ever even feel tired because they're still having calories and a tremendous amount of nutrition. And then they'll exit the other side healed, body completely changed.
But that means also that when you're fasting, also you can like exercise, or I mean, maybe it's something like very subtle and gentle. But if you have like a hectic work load, or you like to exercise, how do you balance the two things?
So that's what I thought too. I used to tell people that fasting and rest are inherently inseparable, and that when you're fasting, you must rest. Until I started experimenting with juice feasting. And so over the last year, like I have a daily Ashtanga practice, Ashtanga Vinyasa, where I practice all the way through primary and halfway through intermediate. That's about a 2-hour practice. and I did it every day for a 47-day juice feast. And I only felt stronger and more capable every subsequent day. And so any time that we have this I need or what if or these self-limiting beliefs, allow the practice of fasting to release you from them. It's pretty magical. Alright, I have a question that 7 people in this room have. Alright, back up.
Speaking to experimenting with it, I often find myself at 5 p.m. I haven't eaten anything. And it's this toxicity symptom, but I feel shaky, clumsy, and my husband feel angry. And I've also had this particular feeling that it's leaving me open to catching colds or susceptible to catching things that people around me have.
Yeah, so thank you. It's not so much, I would say, maybe the fasting or the having not eaten. Maybe it's the fact of whatever was keeping you so busy and stressed that you didn't eat. That's making you feel that way. But that's definitely part of it. There is a blood sugar conversation that could happen. Those don't necessarily sound like classic detox symptoms. I would recommend that you pack lots of baggies of fruit and start a morning juicing practice and stuff like that to get nourishment in, and then see for yourself how you feel at 5 p.m. if it is from a stressful life.
Would you say maybe with this low blood sugar, I'm not a good candidate to?
No. People with low blood sugar, it's more about blood pressure than it is blood sugar, which those two things are actually related. Yes. People with low blood pressure, we'll take that part of the question, do have a harder time, let's say, fasting at first, until you build enough muscle with it, and then you just know what to expect. I would recommend juice feasting in that case. I have lots of physiological symptoms when I'm water fasting, right? Sometimes I'll stand up and I'm like, whoa, because I also have low blood pressure. And you just like black out for a second. Not black out, but you get a little dizzy because there's not the same nourishment in the body. Physiologically, you've changed completely what's normal. At that point, you just take a deep breath, remind yourself everything's okay. Really good to ground. If you guys know the kidney 1 point in Chinese medicine right here, we can do this right now. Great way to ground, especially for any kind of spiritual seeker. Put your feet on the ground. Close your eyes if you'd like, keep them open if you'd like. I'd like you to imagine a nail, a piece of wood or something coming straight from the top of your foot down through that kidney 1 point and into here. Send all of your focus, all of your attention there. Allow everything to drain from your mind down through your legs, into the feet, and down into the earth. Energy from kidney 1 point directly downward. Full intention, foot down into earth. Feel that solidifying there. Fixation, foot on earth, grounded, and take a nice deep breath. Your eyes open whenever you're ready. So for the lovely last question, that'll save you a good 2 years of suffering in your fasting practice. Just ground our intention is way more powerful than our blood sugar or blood pressure. Yeah.
There's a lot of people kind of depend so much on drugs because of any disease like what. I mean, I always recommend my mother to go for fasting, but actually she takes so much medicine, and like you can tell, of course, the doctor will tell her they go on with your drugs, you can't stop it, but what about?
Yeah, so over-the-counter pharmaceutical medications or over-the-counter prescription drugs, if it's cough syrup or a Panadol or something for a headache, people who take these, right? Yes, fasting of course will help, but it would take a little longer. What I would recommend, especially if it's something like that cough or a cold.
No, I'm talking about the rheumatism, it takes strong medicine. I mean, rheumatism is also like kind of a disease.
So,
with fasting, no?
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a specific disease case can be healed with fasting, and I'm trying to generalize your question for everyone else. what you would do if someone had a specific disease case that they had Western pharmaceutical medication that they're taking. I would say that it definitely has to be done with doctors really blessing more than anything, which you would have to have a great doctor to give you a blessing. I would hope that she would be supported by a naturopath or some other kind of fasting specialist. And then she would go on to the fasting protocol, and often you would put a cleansing diet for a long period of time beforehand to taper down the medication, down to the minimum. And you'll notice that there's no symptoms that are coming because of the cleansing diet. Come on the fast, and then come off the medication midway through the fast, where the body still has time to balance. And then have the full rest of your life disease-free. Alright, questions that 10 other people in this room have? Yes?
I didn't want to leave that opportunity. My question relates to what he asked. So here specifically in India, once we practice of fasting is like tradition, culture, we've seen our moms doing that and we follow that. So according to you, what do you suggest? We do like once a week, or in a month we choose like 4 days and go straight. What would be beneficial, or rather, if you were at our place, what would you do?
I love your question. You're allowed to ask it even though you don't think 10 people have it. So she's asking about essentially what's better, 1 day a week fasting, or 1 day every month, or 3 days every month. I do prefer fasting for physiological healing and balancing. And so 1 day is not going to do it. 1 day, 24 hours without eating, your body's not even going to realize it's fasting. So most people who do a 1 day a week fast, it's more of a spiritual practice, which is beautiful and wonderful in and of itself. The physiological benefits and quote-unquote the healing benefits won't be as deep as those that I'm talking about. And so what I would prefer is maybe 3 days every 3 weeks or every month, something like that, or maybe a 5-day fast every 3 months seasonally. You see where you're allowing the time to get deeper. But don't let that cancel out the opportunity to perhaps give your system a rest and not have dinner one night. You'll wake up the next morning feeling tremendously amazing. Yeah, the whole 3 square meals a day idea, does anyone know where that came from? You have to eat 3 meals a day. Yeah, I don't know where it came from either. I think it might have come from the American Dairy and Wheat Association in the 1950s. Sally and Jim eat a well-rounded breakfast. They have their milk, their bacon, their eggs, their toast, and their cereal, right? Whatever it is. How do we know the things that we think we know, that we need breakfast, or that breakfast is the most important meal of the day? They're simply things that people have said. And we've taken them to be true. And so my invitation to you, amazing yogis, is to find your own answers. To find your own health guru inside. And fasting is the springboard from which you make your experiments. It's a tremendous arena to be able to explore inside of. Alright, I think this is amazing because I thought we were going to finish way earlier, so do you still have questions?
I was wondering, when we juice fast, do we strain the juice or should we just have it with the fiber?
Yeah, beautiful question. Okay, so she's asking about juice versus smoothie. You're asking all the right questions. Juice versus smoothie. A smoothie is a smoothie, all right? It's been made in a blender. It still has fiber inside. Is that going to switch on your digestive tract? You betcha. And so that is not fasting. That's not a juice. And so, sure, you can strain it. I don't know what you use to strain it. You have to use a very thin strainer. But we do need juice extracting machines. And so there are 2 kinds of juicers. The one that goes is a masticating juicer. It's going to just tear everything apart. They're often more inexpensive. It will create more waste, and so you won't get as much value out of the produce that you're buying. And then the other kind is a cold pressed juicer. It's one that will go like this, and it will press out all of the juice, which is a plant blood. And those of you who weren't in the lecture the other day, green is mostly the color we're going to be going after here. So that's really almost any leafy green vegetable, cucumber, celery, capsicum, whatever you want. Maybe a teeny little bit of pineapple or green apple, something like that to make it nice and sweet. Put in some ginger. There are millions of juicing recipes online. I go watch on my Instagram, Live for Vitality. And you can find these and just experiment with them, find out what you like. You do normally need one of those two machines. I have a habit of buying them at secondhand stores. I know secondhand stores aren't so easy to come by in India because it's like everything's either brand new or, of course, it's secondhand. But for those of you who live in Europe and other places, get something in the secondhand store and really get into the practice of juicing. You can use the juicing for fasting, or you can have juice first thing in the morning every day. And then once you've invested in the practice, then you can invest in a nicer machine. Brilliant question. All right, one more. Who has the most important question in the room? Yes.
Are you having a retreat, fasting retreat after the festival?
I love you. Yeah, I am. My next fasting retreat is in Sri Lanka. This that you have is for a 100-hour teacher training, part of a 500-hour certification. It also is a standalone retreat. And then directly after that, I have a fasting program. I'll have a flyer for it up here on my computer. I'd love if you come to look. That's from the 14th to the 21st of April at a gorgeous retreat center in Sri Lanka. It's arranged by Condé Nast and written up about in a bunch of papers like the Times of India. And so if you do want to take this to the next level, come join me for the fasting retreat. It's a completely life-transforming process. It's much more than just physical. Yes. All right, I love all of you. I will be around. I'll be here. You can come ask me all the questions that didn't get answered. Say goodbye to your neighbor that you met, and I'll see you next year. If you want to come take a picture, maybe want a picture too. We'll let you. If you're from Bombay, I will be doing a fasting retreat there as well over the 17th or 18th of March at an amazing new center called So please, if you're from the Bombay area, I'm coming your way right out to the West End.
So let's take a